So in this video we're going to discuss the concept behind SaaSet, and that is we're going to look at kind of what makes it tick and explain the basic concept. To do this, I'm not even going to go into the actual product. I want to show you something else. If you've never used SaaSet or any recipe-based software builder before, then the best way of me explaining what it does is to talk about the game Mad Libs. And bear with me because this will begin to make sense in a second. The idea of Mad Libs, let's take this one as an example, is that you have a story written that there are blank spaces left in, and in the game it asks you to give either an adjective or a noun or a verb, and you give it the appropriate type of word, and then at the end you read the story and see what you got. So here's an example one. Let me zoom in a bit so we can see that a little bit better. So here you have a vacation is when you take a trip to some blank, and in that blank we know they're going to put in an adjective with your, and then there's another one there. And at its most simple, what SaaSet does is it plays Mad Libs, but not for fun. It does it with a purpose in mind. The difference is that we can take any text-based file, it can be HTML, JavaScript, PHP, many others, and in place of certain pieces of information we can basically tell it that that is a blank space and that the software will be filling that blank in. The only difference is that we don't always have to just ask somebody what we want to put in the gap. So for example, some information the system will know, and some information the computers can generate on the fly as we go through it. So, for example, if we wanted to insert today's date in a letter, we wouldn't have to say, what is today's date, and have a question come up, because the computer knows today's date, so it could just fill that in for us. So at its core, that is what it's doing. We're putting in these what we call tags, into a file. So we would take our HTML template, for example, or our PHP script, or just our text file, and wherever we wanted to put in one of these blanks, we would put in what we call a tag in SaaSet. And tags are always represented in a certain way. That is, they are an open square bracket, then a hash symbol, then a word, a unique word, which is the tag name, followed by another hash symbol and a closed square bracket. So if this was a text file and we wanted to make it so that it could be used by SaaSet, we would put in here tag 1, tag 2, tag 3, tag 4, and so on. We might give them names that meant something to us. So a vacation is when you take a trip to some sort of place. So we would put in maybe a tag called place type. And then in here we might put in a tag called family description, and so on. So things that make sense to us, so that when SaaSet processes the file and the tags come up, we understand what tag is what. The one key difference that SaaSet has over many other previous template recipe based software systems is that SaaSet can work with entire files of folders, it can work with subfolders, and it can scan multiple files. You can just choose to work with one file and you can just display it on screen at the end. You can work with several files, you can deliver them as a zip file at the end, you can upload direct to a server, you do all these kind of things. But I just wanted to explain this Mad Libs idea. Now I just want to take us to a rather poor drawing I've done on my whiteboard, just to kind of explain the process that SaaSet goes through. So this is an illustration because you need to imagine a kind of conveyor belt, and this is a poor drawing of a conveyor belt. And here are the tags on the conveyor belt, and each tag is processed in order. So for example, the first tag we have, because we put them into order, the first tag on our list, it comes up and it will look at this, and SaaSet will be told to either ask the user for some input, or it will be told what data we want to put into that box. And you've got to kind of imagine this is a clear box, but once we put the data in, the box is closed and sealed down, and then we move to the next one. So, for example, if I was to put in here, let's put some text in here. So, say I had a question, it asked what my name was, and I put my name in there, and that's now in that box, and then we move to the next tag. So we're now going and we're processing tag 2. Now when we're doing tag 2, what we answer or what we compute or if we do an equation or we calculate something, we can only put the answer in here into tag 2. We can look at what's in tag 1, we can read that back, but we can't affect it when we're working on tag 2. The only way we can change that is to physically go back, step back to that tag and change the answer to it, or change the equation. So when SaaSet is processing, it processes in order. Now there are some clever things we can do. We can have a tag that checks for a certain condition to see if it's true or not, and if it is, we can tell it to jump to a tag down here. There are things like that. When we do that, these tags don't get filled in with any information. It's as if they pretty much don't exist. They get ignored. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're doing your processing. So everything is sequential. Now, say we wanted to take whatever information the customer or the user typed in on tag 1, and we wanted to do something simple like make the whole word uppercase. There are commands that do that kind of thing, but we can't change tag 1 when we're on tag 2. So what we would do is we would tell it to put a copy of tag 1 into tag 2 and make it uppercase. And so the uppercase version of this would end up in here, like this. I explain this now because one of the most common queries we get from people is that they try and do things like when they get to tag 2, they try and put in a command thinking it's going to edit what was in an earlier tag. It never does. You only ever affect the tag you are currently processing. That is a core value of SaaSet and something you need to keep in mind. Now, I don't want this to confuse you or anything like that, so if you don't follow quite at this stage, it doesn't matter. I just want you to get the basic concept of what SaaSet is actually doing. And the idea would be you would fill all these things in, and at the end, it will go through your file or files, and it will look for wherever there's a tag, and it will replace it with the values that you have given it or that it has calculated. That is what SaaSet is doing. And there are several ways you can then deliver the content at the end. But you just at this stage want you to grasp that basic idea of kind of how it processes tags, how it always runs in sequence. For when we get to the more advanced stuff like jumping, just be aware that if you have, if in here we had a thing that said if tag 2 equals Andy, then jump to tag 5. When that was true, it would do that, and tag 4 would just not be filled in. Tag 4 would be nothing. So just to understand those basic concepts, and then we're going to get into actually using SaaSet in the next video.